You are listening on Velvet Audio Stories, a brain-hacking IQ test.
Chapter 11. The Aftertaste of Life. 3 weeks after the bloody night, the Volkov estate was submerged in an unusual silence. The bullet holes in the walls had been plastered over, and the scent of gunpowder was replaced by the clean fragrance of white tea. Yet, the atmosphere between the two people inside remained as taut as an overstretched piano wire. Adrian sat by the window in the study, his silk shirt unbuttoned at the top, revealing the white bandages still wrapped around his chest. He no longer possessed the ferocity of a wounded beast, but his presence alone was enough to make the surrounding air grow dense. Lena entered, carrying a tray of medical supplies. She looked at him with eyes that held neither fear nor the detached coldness of a scientist. "It's time to change the dressings," she said briefly. Adrian didn't respond. He simply turned around in silence. As Lena gently peeled away the old bandages, fresh red scars emerged, interlacing with the faded, older marks. Her fingers instinctively brushed over the delicate stitching on his chest, the mark left by her own hand. Suddenly, Adrian flinched. It was a very slight tremor, but enough for Lena to notice. "Does it hurt?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Not exactly pain," Adrian rasped, his eyes squeezed shut. "It's like an electric current running down my spine. I can feel the warmth from your fingertips. It's terrifyingly vivid." Lena paused, her breath hitching in her throat. "The final dose I injected during surgery, it reactivated your sensory nerves more powerfully than expected. You aren't numb anymore, Adrian." Adrian opened his eyes, his ash-gray gaze now reflecting her image with an intense ferocity. He seized her hand, pressing her palm against his cheek. "You've succeeded, Doctor. You've created a monster that can feel." He gave a faint, self-deprecating smile. "Now, every time I look at you, my heart beats so fast I think I'm going to die all over again. Every time you touch me, I feel like I'm burning up." "Is this what you wanted?" "I wanted you to live," Lena whispered, not pulling her hand away but instead softly caressing his angular face. "But I didn't realize that the price of life would be this much agony." "Agony is the only proof that I'm no longer a machine." Adrian pulled her closer, his breath lingering around her lips. "But you have to take responsibility for this, Lena. You can't awaken a soul and then leave it alone in the dark." He didn't wait for her answer. Adrian buried his face in the crook of her neck, inhaling her scent like a starving man who had found the source of life. Lena shuddered, wrapping her arms around his neck and embracing those broad shoulders. She realized then that this experiment had spiraled far beyond her control. She hadn't just healed him, she had locked herself into an eternal covenant. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, hot tears tracing down her cheeks. Adrian lifted his head, his eyes burning with absolute possessiveness. He swept her up in his arms, walking toward the large bed in the dim shadows of the twilight. The bargain with the devil did not end in death. It began with a painful yet mesmerizing bond, where agony and love became one. Chapter 12. The Shackles of Freedom. The morning sun filtered through the thin silk curtains, casting weak streaks of light across Adrian's body. He lay there, eyes fixed on the ceiling, feeling every pulse of life screaming through his veins. Lena was still fast asleep beside him, her hair spilled across the pillow like a surreal dark stream. Adrian shifted his arm slightly. A sharp sting of pain shot from the unhealed wound in his shoulder straight to his brain. He didn't flinch. On the contrary, he savored it. The pain was the only anchor holding him to reality, preventing him from slipping back into the black void of numbness. He sat up and walked to the desk. On it lay a new passport and a thick stack of cash. This was Lena's ticket out of here, her chance to return to the world of light, far from the scent of blood and purges. "Are you planning to send me away?" Lena's voice rose, raspy from sleep. She had been standing behind him for some time, her silk robe draped loosely over her shoulders. Adrian did not turn around. "Mikhail is dead, but his empire is not. Others will come. Staying by my side right now is suicide, Lena. I committed suicide the night I agreed to your contract." Lena stepped forward, wrapping her arms around his waist and pressing her face against his broad, scarred back. "Do you think after everything we've been through, I can just go back to being a normal doctor? I've seen the demon inside me, Adrian, and it only wants to be near you." Adrian spun around, gripping her chin to force her to look directly into his eyes. "You don't understand. This feeling. It's consuming me. Every time you leave my sight, I feel suffocated." This isn't love, Lena. It's an addiction. I will lock you in this gilded cage until we both rot together. Then lock me in, Lena smiled, a look that blended madness with compassion. I'd rather be your prisoner than a free person in the emptiness. Adrian's grip tightened, a fierce internal struggle evident on his face. He wanted to push her away to protect her, but his newly awakened possessive instinct shrieked at him to keep her at all costs. He picked up the passport and set it ablaze right in front of her. The blue flame devoured the pages, reflecting in the eyes of two sinners. The contract has changed, Adrian whispered, his voice dropping to a threatening low. The price is no longer my pain. The price is your entire life. Lena showed no fear. She rose on her tiptoes and placed a gentle but firm kiss on his lips. I've already signed in blood, Adrian. You can never revoke it. Beneath their feet, the ashes of freedom still glowed red. Outside, new enemies lurked in the shadows, but inside the Volkov estate, a new order had been established. An order built on pain, possession, and a twisted kind of love that no one but they could ever comprehend. Chapter 13. Ghosts of the Past. The encrypted ringtone cut through the dead of night, shattering the lethal stillness of the estate. Lena stared at the unfamiliar string of numbers on the screen, her heart skipping a beat. She stepped out onto the balcony, the cold wind whipping her silk robe, overpowering the lingering warmth of Adrian still etched into her skin. Lena, it's me. That voice. Deep, righteous, and promising. A sound belonging to a life Lena thought she had buried long ago. Julian, the man who had proposed to her under a Boston sunset, the man who had vanished without a trace just before she was sucked into Adrian's orbit. Julian? You're alive? Lena whispered, her hands trembling as she gripped the stone railing. I'm an undercover agent for Interpol, Lena. I had to fake my death to infiltrate Volkov's network. Listen to me, I'm very close to you. I know he's holding you captive. I know about those twisted experiments. Lena fell silent. Guilt and shock intertwined. She looked through the glass door, catching the silhouette of Adrian resting in the armchair, his handgun resting neatly on his thigh. He looked peaceful, a fragile piece she had helped construct. I'm not being held captive, Julian, Lena said, her voice turning unexpectedly firm. Don't lie to me. He's a monster, a serial killer. You're suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, Lena. Wake up. Julian's voice grew urgent. I have a warrant for his arrest. If you cooperate, you'll be cleared of all charges. Hand Adrian over to me. Give me the data on his nervous system, the only weakness he has. We can start over. I'll bring you home. Home? Lena repeated, a bitter smile playing on her lips. Where is my home, Julian? A place where patients look at me as a fake savior, or here, where a demon sees the true cruelty inside me? Lena, I'm giving you a way out. Tomorrow, at midnight, open the west gate and inject him with that paralyzing agent. If you don't, the task force will storm the place. He'll die, and you'll be destroyed along with him. The call ended abruptly. Lena stood motionless in the dark. She felt a presence behind her. Adrian had been standing there for some time, his ash-gray eyes boring into her back. Who was it? Adrian asked, his voice low but carrying an invisible threat. Lena turned, slipping the phone into her pocket. She looked at the face of the man who had learned to feel pain because of her, who had burned his own freedom for her. Just a ghost from the past, Adrian. Adrian stepped closer, his large hand tangling in her hair, forcing her head back. He smelled the fear, the scent of hesitation. You're lying. Your heart is racing. Is someone trying to steal you from me? He leaned down, his teeth grazing the shell of her ear. Mark my words, Lena. Anyone who touches you, I will kill. Anyone who tries to take you away, I will make the whole world mourn. Even if it is your home. Lena closed her eyes. She realized she was standing between two abysses. On one side was justice, an old flame, and moral redemption. On the other was Adrian, pain, possession, and a love so dark there was no turning back. The greatest deception wasn't that Julian was an agent, it was that Adrian had never fully trusted her, and she had never truly wanted to be saved. Chapter 14. The Intersection of Betrayal. The fateful night arrived. The Volkov estate was submerged in a fog so thick it obscured the sniper muzzles lurking in the thickets. Lena stood in the laboratory, her trembling hands preparing a syringe. But inside was not the paralyzing agent Julian had demanded. It was a chemical cocktail that had never been tested. Adrian entered, wearing a jet black shirt, his tie knotted loosely. He said nothing, merely standing behind her, his gaze as still as a lake before a storm. "Is it time, doctor?" Adrian asked softly. Lena turned, hiding the syringe behind her back. "Julian is waiting at the west gate. He has a task force. If you go now, we can." "We?" Adrian interrupted. He stepped closer, pinning her against the cold stainless steel of the operating table. "You still use the word, we, while you hold the key to my destruction. Give it to me, Lena." He held out his massive hand. Lena bit her lip, slowly bringing the syringe out in front of him. "This is the only thing that can stop your pain if they open fire. Adrian, please, trust me this once." Adrian took the syringe, twirling it slightly under the light. He laughed, a laugh full of agony. "Trust you? I gave you my heart, and you intend to use it as your final laboratory specimen?" At that exact moment, a siren wailed from the west gate. High-intensity searchlights swept across the laboratory windows. Julian stepped out from the shadows, his megaphone echoing, "Adrian Volkov. You are surrounded. Lena, step out right now." Adrian seized the nape of Lena's neck, pulling her face inches from his. "He's come to rescue his little bird. But he doesn't know that this bird has already been stained by my blood." He suddenly shoved Lena aside and lunged toward the balcony. Gunfire began to crackle. Lena ran after him, screaming, "Julian, stop! Don't shoot!" Through the hail of bullets, Julian spotted Lena. He lowered his weapon, signaling his team to cease fire. "Lena, run to me. I'll protect you." Adrian stood tall on the railing, a perfect target. He looked at Julian with utter disdain, then turned to look at Lena. He raised the syringe, not in self-defense, but to plunge it hard into his own carotid artery. "Adrian, no!" Lena shrieked. Adrian's body locked up. His ash-gray eyes bulged as a frantic surge of energy erupted. He didn't fall. On the contrary, he leapt from the second-floor balcony like a black phantom, charging straight into the task force with unthinkable speed. The spectacular deception began here. That syringe was neither a paralyzing agent nor a painkiller. It was an extreme neurostimulant that Lena had specially formulated. It converted every sensation of pain into pure muscular power. Lena had not betrayed Adrian the way Julian wanted. She had betrayed her own professional ethics to transform Adrian into an unstoppable killing machine. Julian watched in horror as Adrian snapped an agent's rifle with his bare hands. "Lena, what have you done?" Lena stood on the balcony, her eyes cold and hollow. "I told you, Julian. I don't save people. I just love the feeling of being God." The battle in the courtyard turned into a one-sided massacre. Adrian, in a chemical-induced state of total euphoria, was no longer man, nor was he demon. He was a god of destruction that Lena's own hands had molded. Chapter 15. Ashes of AGOD. The pungent scent of gunpowder and blood rose from the courtyard below, mingling with the frigid night mist. Under the flickering searchlights, Adrian moved like an ungraspable phantom. Every punch, every stride of his carried 1,000 pounds of force, shattering every law of physics. The most elite Interpol agents collapsed like tattered rag dolls before this chemical-induced rage. Julian recoiled, his hands trembling as he reloaded his weapon. He looked up at the balcony, where Lena stood as still as a stone statue. "Lena, stop him. He's going to kill everyone." But Lena heard nothing. She was observing her masterpiece. Her gaze was fixed on Adrian, the man laughing hysterically amidst a pain that had been transmuted into absolute euphoria. This was the pinnacle of the contract, a man who knew no pain, now using pain itself to become invincible. Suddenly, Adrian froze. The veins in his neck bulged, turning a bruised purple. The stimulant was incinerating his nervous system at a terrifying speed. He dropped to one knee, clutching his chest, his breath wheezing like the grinding of metal. "Adrian!" Lena shrieked, her coldness evaporating. She lunged down the stairs, defying the muzzles still aimed in her direction. Julian seized the opportunity, rushing forward to restrain Adrian. But the moment he touched his shoulder, Adrian looked up. His ash-gray eyes had turned a vivid red from ruptured capillaries. He seized Julian's throat, hoisting him into the air with one hand. "You were wrong, Julian," Adrian rasped, blood seeping from the corner of his mouth. "She didn't need saving. She needed an accomplice. Let him go, Adrian." Lena knelt beside him, grasping his tightening arm. "The drug is destroying your heart. If you don't stop, you'll suffer a brain hemorrhage." Adrian looked at Lena, a gaze filled with a frantic adoration. He loosened his grip, letting Julian slump to the ground, unconscious. Then he collapsed into Lena's lap, his massive frame shuddering violently. "I feel it now, Lena," Adrian whispered, his voice fading. "The pain, it's burning me from the inside. It's magnificent." "Shut up! Don't say another word." Lena tremblingly pulled another syringe from her pocket, the only neutralizing dose she had. "I won't let you die after making you this way." She plunged the needle into his chest, directly over his heart. Adrian let out one final groan and lost consciousness. Around them, the sirens of backup police cars wailed from the distance. The Volkov estate was now nothing more than a blood-soaked ruin. Lena held Adrian tight, her face splattered with his blood. She looked up at the night sky, where the stars were obscured by gray smoke. She had defeated Julian, she had saved Adrian, but she knew she had lost her soul forever tonight. "We're going, Adrian," she whispered into his ear, though she didn't know if he could hear her. "To a place where there are no angels or demons. Only your pain, and my salvation." Chapter 16. The Eternal Covenant. 6 months later, on a remote island off the Mediterranean coast, where jagged cliffs separated the world with violent waves, a stark white villa sat in solitude, devoid of guards or security cameras, with only the sound of wind whistling through the pine groves. Adrian sat on the porch, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The vivid red scar on his neck was the sole remaining testament to that fateful night. He was no longer the city's demon, yet the stillness radiating from him was more haunting than his former brutality. Light footsteps echoed from behind. Lena stepped out, carrying a glass of juice and a small tray of glass test tubes. "How does it feel today?" she asked, placing the tray on the table. Adrian turned and seized her wrist. He didn't use force, but his fingers trembled uncontrollably. "The pain is spreading from my spine to the crown of my head. It's like thousands of needles are piercing my brain." Lena showed no concern. She smiled, a smile of eerie tenderness. She knelt between his legs, uncapping a test tube and using a cotton swab to apply the liquid inside to Adrian's temples. "That is the price of life, Adrian. Your nerves were permanently damaged after that dose. Now, you are more sensitive to pain than any ordinary human." Adrian let out a low groan, leaning his head back against the chair, savoring the cool touch of Lena's hands. "You've made me an addict, Lena. Addicted to the pain, and addicted to you. We belong to each other," Lena whispered, her lips grazing the scar on his neck. "I cast aside my reputation, abandoned my ethics, and turned you into a living piece of art. You cannot exist without my medicine, and I cannot exist without your devotion." Julian and Interpol were still relentlessly hunting them across the globe. In the eyes of justice, Lena was a dangerous criminal, a traitor who had aided a demon. But here, in this solitary kingdom, she was God. Adrian pulled Lena into his lap, clutching her as if trying to carve her into his own flesh. The pain still hummed through his body, but it was no longer the enemy. It was the golden chain that bound their two souls together. "Do you regret it?" Adrian asked, his voice raspy. Lena looked into his ash-gray eyes, the eyes that were now flooded with emotion and dependency. She picked up a small knife from the table, lightly sliced a line across her palm, and pressed it against Adrian's. Their blood mingled, hot and real. "Regret is an emotion for the weak," Lena replied, her gaze burning with a mesmerizing madness. "This contract is eternal, until death do us part, or until I find another way to make you hurt even more." Adrian laughed, a satisfied sound. He leaned down to kiss her, a kiss heavy with the taste of blood and possession. The experiment had ended. The demon had found a heart, and the savior had found her own darkness. They needed no forgiveness, for in the world of pain, they were each other's paradise. Chapter 17. The Dance of Possession. The Mediterranean storm roared offshore, lashing white-capped waves against the cliffs, but inside the villa, the silence was more daunting than the tempest. Adrian lay on the black leather bed, sweat drenching the strands of hair across his forehead. He was no longer the invincible predator. Now, he was a prisoner of the very nervous system that had been awakened. Lena sat beside him, nonchalantly flipping through the pages of her experimental journal. She didn't look at him, but every faint groan from Adrian made her heart beat a fraction faster. "Today is the 12th dose," Lena said, her voice as steady as a devoted nurse. "If I inject more, you will lose motor function for 4 hours. But in exchange, you'll feel as if you're dissolving into the void. Adrian forced himself up, his trembling hands gripping her shoulders. He buried his face in the crook of Lena's neck, his breath hot and rapid. Inject it. I want to feel it. I want to see that you are the only one who holds my life. Lena set the journal down, pulling out a syringe that shimmered under the dim light. She was in no rush. She loved the way Adrian looked at her, a gaze of supplication, adoration, and absolute dependency. Do you know why Julian will never find us? She whispered, the cold needle touching the thin skin of his arm. Because I left a fake corpse in the ruins of the estate. To the world, Dr. Lena died along with the demon Volkov. We are 2 erased souls. The needle pierced deep. Adrian tensed as a surge of agony mingled with primal ecstasy raced down his spine. He collapsed back into the pillows, his clouded ash-gray eyes looking at Lena as if looking at the soul saint of his life. You were the mastermind, weren't you? Adrian rasped, his smile carrying a manic satisfaction. From the very first night, you knew you wouldn't kill me. I don't kill what I love, Adrian. Lena leaned down, her fingers tracing his heaving chest. I only reinvent them. You are my greatest achievement. A demon who knows how to kneel before a scalpel. Outside, lightning tore through the pitch-black sky. In the room filled with the scent of antiseptic and incense, the boundary between love and torture had completely vanished. Lena lay down beside Adrian, embracing his gradually paralyzing body. She realized that absolute possession was not about locking someone in a cage, but about becoming their only source of oxygen. Adrian could not leave her, not because of iron chains, but because every cell in his body now bore her mark. Sleep, Adrian, Lena whispered, kissing his closing eyes. Tomorrow, I will show you a new level of pain. And you will love me more than ever before. The covenant had no end. Only new chapters of a dark novel, where pain was the ink and blood was the blank page upon which they wrote their own destiny. Chapter 18. The White Symphony. Dawn on the island brought no warmth. The early rays only emphasized the isolation of the white villa amidst the vast ocean. Inside the private laboratory, now their sanctuary, Lena was meticulously adjusting the frequency of a wireless neurostimulator. Adrian sat opposite her, his bare torso revealing rugged muscles now interlaced with intricate scars. He no longer resisted. He sat there, as still as a cursed Grecian statue, awaiting judgment from Lena's fingertips. Today, we test synchronization, Lena said, her voice echoing in the sterile space. She attached a small electrode to her own wrist, then placed the other on the corresponding spot on Adrian's. What are you doing? Adrian asked raspily, his ash-gray eyes narrowing. If pain is the only thing connecting you to this world, then I want to be the one to share it. Lena pressed the start button. A biofeedback system. What you feel, I will also feel. At half the intensity. A light current surged through. Adrian flinched, but immediately after, he saw Lena also shudder slightly. Her eyes glazed over, a strange smile blooming on her lips. Do you see, Adrian? It's brilliant. Adrian lunged forward, seizing her shoulders and forcing her to look directly at him. You're insane, Lena. You don't need to endure this. This is my punishment, not yours. This isn't punishment, it's fusion. Lena pressed her palm against his chest, where Adrian's heart was racing under the electric influence. You said I was your accomplice. Then let me taste the bitterness you carry. The intensity climbed. Adrian gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down, but he did not let go of Lena. He realized this was her ultimate form of possession. She didn't just want to control his body, she wanted to assimilate his soul into her own nervous system. Amidst the searing pain, an invisible bond formed. They needed no words. Every breath, every muscle spasm was transmitted back and forth like a wordless symphony. Adrian felt himself dissolving into Lena, and Lena felt herself truly touching the core of the demon she had created. Stop, that's enough, Adrian whispered as he saw Lena's face turn pale. Not yet, Lena gasped, her hand trembling as she dialed the control even higher. I want to know why you love this pain so much. In that moment, the boundary between experimenter and specimen collapsed entirely. They were merely two solitary beings finding each other in the depths of agony. Adrian swept Lena up, laying her onto the cold examination table, but this time, it was not for surgery. He kissed her, a kiss carrying the salt of sweat and the numbness of electricity. The pain was no longer a barrier. It was a catalyst that made every touch exponentially more intense. "If this is hell," Adrian whispered between kisses, "then I am content to burn with you forever." Outside, the waves continued to lash against the cliffs, erasing all traces of the human world. In the White Room, the symphony of possession continued to resonate, marking a new chapter where two mad souls had found perfect balance in their mutual destruction. Chapter 19. Traces of the Hunter. The storm passed, leaving the Mediterranean sky a cold, piercing shade of azure. But that peace failed to reach the interior of the white villa. Adrian lay asleep, his breath heavy and fragmented, his body still twitching slightly after last night's synchronization. Pain had now become a part of his physical architecture, a loyal lover that never departed. Lena stood by the window, looking down at the tranquil bay. Her reflection in the glass appeared haggard, her eyes shadowed, yet burning with a distinct, jubilant light. She held a biochemical analyzer, the screen displaying a frantic dance of metrics. "A perfect fusion," she whispered, her finger tracing the touchscreen. "Your pain feeds my life, and vice versa. We are no longer two separate entities. We are an infinite loop." A knock at the door shattered the dry silence of the laboratory. Lena started, the device nearly slipping from her hand. On this remote island, no one was supposed to know they existed. "Who is it?" Lena asked, her voice ice cold, her hand reaching into her lab coat pocket for a razor-sharp scalpel. There was no verbal response. Only the rustle of paper being slid through the gap beneath the door. Lena cautiously approached and picked up the sheet. It was an old photograph, yellowed by time. In the photo was a young girl with a radiant smile, standing beside a man in a police uniform. The face of that girl was Lena 10 years ago. And the man was Julian. Lena's heart constricted. An overwhelming sense of dread seized her. Not the fear of being captured, but the fear that the past would strip away the present she had so meticulously constructed. "He found it," Lena rasped, her hand trembling as she gripped the photo. Adrian jolted awake, the dry rattle of the bed frame echoing as he tried to sit up. "What is it, Lena?" Lena hurriedly hid the photo in her pocket. She turned back, forcing a reassuring smile. "Nothing. Just the wind blowing too hard." But Adrian didn't believe her. He saw the panic in her eyes. He smelled the fear diffusing through the air. He forced himself up, stepping off the bed, his body still unsteady from the aftershocks of the current. "You're hiding something from me," Adrian said, his voice a low, threatening rumble. He stepped closer, pinning her against the wall. "Tell me, who came here?" Lena looked into his possessive, ash-gray eyes. She knew she couldn't keep it from him any longer. "Julian. He's found this island." A cruel smile spread across Adrian's face. He wasn't afraid. On the contrary, he felt exhilarated. The hunter had appeared, and the wild beast was ready for a new hunt. "Then let him come," Adrian whispered, his large hand tangling in her hair, forcing her head back. "He wants to rescue you from my hands. But he doesn't know that you are the one who locked me in this gilded cage. And I, contentedly remain your prisoner forever." He leaned down to kiss her, a kiss heavy with the taste of blood and possession. The symphony of pain continued to resonate, but this time, it carried a new melody, the melody of resistance and a life-and-death struggle about to begin. Chapter 20. The Last Savior. Julian stood on the precipice of the jagged cliff, his black overcoat fluttering violently in the salty sea breeze. He brought no task force, no armed helicopters. There was only him, a handgun concealed behind his back, and a heart riddled with the scars of betrayal. He looked toward the white villa, a place that resembled a paradise but was, in reality, a slaughterhouse for souls. The main door swung open. Lena stepped out, the hem of her white lab coat drifting in the wind. She was not surprised to see him. She simply stood there, watching him with the eyes of someone who had long since ceased to belong to the world of light. "You arrived sooner than I expected, Julian," Lena said, her voice as cold as melting ice. "Lena, let's go. It's over." Julian stepped closer, his hand outstretched as if trying to grasp a mirage. "I've erased every trail leading here. No one knows I'm here. We can leave, start over from the beginning. I will protect you from him." Lena burst into laughter, a harsh sound echoing against the cliffs. "Protect me? Julian, you are still as naive as you were 10 years ago. Do you think I am a victim? Look into my eyes. Do you see any fear? Julian froze. In Lena's eyes, he saw not a plea for help, but a manic arrogance. And then, from the shadows of the main hall, Adrian emerged. He no longer possessed the grandeur of a crime lord, but the deathly aura radiating from his scarred body made the air turn thick. "He is a monster, Lena. He turned you into this," Julian shouted, his hand gripping the butt of his gun. "No, Julian," Adrian spoke, his voice deep and heavy like thunder from beneath the earth. "I am her masterpiece. She didn't save me. She recreated me in the image of the pain she always craved." Adrian stepped closer to Lena, wrapping an arm possessively around her waist. He looked at Julian with disdain. "You want to take her away? Could you endure what she would do to you? Would you dare let her dissect your soul every night in search of euphoria?" Julian pulled his gun, the muzzle trembling as he aimed it at Adrian. "I will kill you and take her back." "Shoot then," Lena challenged, stepping forward to shield Adrian's chest. "But you should know, if you shoot him, you are shooting me. We have synchronized. His pain is mine, his death will be mine as well." Julian lowered his gun in horror. He saw the morbid bond between them, an invisible chain woven from blood and chemicals. They didn't need saving. They had found paradise in their own hell. "You are truly lost," Julian whispered, tears welling up. "I was never lost, Julian. I only just found myself," Lena replied, her gaze burning. Adrian leaned down, kissing the top of Lena's head in front of his enemy. "Get out, hero. Your world has no room for us. And our hell does not welcome the holy." Julian turned and walked away, his shadow stretching long across the cliffs. He knew he had lost, not to Adrian, but to the deep darkness within the heart of the woman he loved. Behind him, the doors of the white villa closed, locking two mad souls into an eternal symphony of possession.
If you enjoy dark, high-stakes narratives and cinematic visuals, don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter, like the video to support the creator, comment below. Do you think Adrian is truly free, or is Lena still pulling the strings?